This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. It is not intended to cause or induce breach of an existing agency agreement.
Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver
Commercial
Real Estate Podcast.
And welcome back to the Vancouver Commercial Real Estate Podcast. I'm Cory Wright.
And I'm your sometimes co-host, Matt Scalina.
And Matt, I can tell the real estate market is back. You walked in today looking like you walked out of a Harry Rosen window, all dressed to the nines. Sweatpants are gone. Lululemon. The market is back.
The market is back. It's busy out there. Yeah. This has been going on for the last couple months now, but back to the Monday, Tuesdays offer days. So it just becomes, the weekend is busy, and then it's like, all right, the Monday, Tuesday, it's an explosion of activity. So I'm glad to be back.
That's
I'm
good.
glad to be back on the show, and I'm glad to be dressed up. It feels good.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
So who do we got on the show today, Cory?
Today we have Rod MacKay from our Vancouver office. Some of our listeners might remember him. We had him earlier on in the year when we went through the top 5 markets that we predicted for the podcast, which we thought potentially would be your best markets to invest in this year. We have Rod coming back to do kind of like a recap on the first 4 or 5 months, see how we fared with our markets that we picked, and also what asset classes are winners and what asset classes are losers so far, which you'll find there's not very many losers, which is surprising some people, but we have him back today. We're going to recap the first 4 or 5 months of the year and also give our predictions of what the last half of this year will look like and 2024. We have a different crystal ball than most. Ours is 110% accurate at all times. So we'll be very interested to see if we pull that out today or not.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's funny doing this show and then listening and watching when somebody else is sitting in my chair today. But all the stuff out of the U.S. about commercial real estate, and I guess it's primarily office, but there's just such a negativity that just doesn't come across the border.
I think we're different. We operate different up here. We have different rules, different, if you look at things too, like if you look at a lot of the major REITs that may own assets in both North America, they tend to sell a lot of their assets in the States a lot quicker than they do up here, right? Which I think is a good indication of the marketplace. And you read a lot of these, major corporations that are defaulting on interest payments on office portfolios. And obviously it grabs the media headlines, but you'd like to think, and maybe this is just my guess, that there's more of a strategic play here. Because at the end of the day, I think some of these companies are just taunting the banks like, do you want them?
Right.
Right? So it gives them the ability potentially to kind of like almost restructure potentially some of the debts that they do have on there. No questions asked. The market, the office market down south has been impacted a lot greater than, say, some of the office markets we have up here. Vancouver, obviously, vacancy is higher now than it was pre-pandemic, but a balanced market is probably considered 7-8%, so we're not too far off. We also are landlocked with the downtown marketplace. So we have all that versus, say, a marketplace like Alberta, where you can continue to build, or some of the parts in the States you can continue to build. So I would read the headlines with a grain of salt, and I think if we fast forward 6 months to a year from now, we can sort of see maybe there's a strategic play somewhere behind the lines there that it's like, hey, if you want them, you can have them, Mr. Bank. And the bank's like, well, let's talk about your debt. So we'll see what happens.
That's interesting. So it's a hardball play. That's what's going on.
It could be. Now, I think some markets that are very challenged, like San Francisco, that's almost a copy and repeat. I think you're going to kind of see what happened in Calgary, where Calgary was so divested heavily into one industry, being oil and gas. San Francisco primarily was a lot of tech.
Yeah.
Right. So they may have a challenging time there. Coming out of that, they're going to have to reinvent themselves, even try to diversify. A lot of these office portfolio companies will have to diversify the tenant mixes they have. So definitely some challenges ahead. I don't think we have those same challenges in the Canadian major markets as you see down south right now.
Fantastic. Well, maybe we'll save the rest of this conversation, Cory, for our talk with Rod MacKay. Anything else before we get to it? You fall off your Peloton lately or anything?
No, but actually, I can tell you right now, mainly because this is going to kind of paint the picture heading into the springtime here. So, you know how in your closet you have fat pants, like kind of like these are my pants I wear when I'm in shape, and then you have the fat pants you just don't get rid of in case you kind of get to there.
Yeah.
So my fat pants are now just my pants. So that's not a good sign coming into springtime and my bikini season here.
Sun's out, guns out.
Sun's out, guns out, yeah. So my bikini season's right around the corner, and my fat pants are officially just my pants now. So I don't know how well the Peloton's working, and that one left pedal that causes me all the problems starting to wobble again. So I don't know if that's because I've just gained too much weight over the fall season, but time will tell. Like just like the American real estate market, time will tell where we're at 6 months to a year from now.
Fantastic. Well, maybe we'll leave it there and cut to our talk with Rod MacKay.
Enjoy, guys. This week's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Impact Commercial Group.
Really enjoy working with Impact Commercial. And we should say Al and his team can basically do anything when it comes to lending.
Anything when it comes under the commercial umbrella. You're building a building in development, we got you covered. You're buying land, we'll make that happen for you. You're investing in a property or multifamily building, check. Owner-occupiers looking to acquire their own space, double check. Anything commercial financing you need, Impact Commercial is your go-to.
ImpactCommercial.ca. And we should say over 50 years of combined experience. So trust these guys. They're the right fit.
Best in the business, in my opinion. All right, so we're here today with Rod MacKay from William Wright Vancouver's office. Rod, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks, Cory.
Rod, you are a past guest.
And I'd say fan favorite.
Fan favorite. And,
in fact, can I break the news?
Yeah, go.
Rod, we follow what performs both on the show and on our website. And I believe your downloads are phenomenal for your 5 best investments in British Columbia. But you're, I think, the number 1 performing page on the VancouverRealEstatePodcast.com in terms of visitors. So
that's why
I'll make you famous.
Our ratings are down. We need to bring you back on.
Confidence is up going into this podcast. Appreciate that, guys.
Rod, for those listeners who haven't heard your record-setting previous episodes, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
And focus on the marathon a little bit?
Oh, yeah, we could talk about that a little bit. So, yeah, just quickly, born and raised in Vancouver. So I've lived here my entire life. My father actually has had his own real estate brokerage for the past 40 years or so. So that was, largely one of the bigger influences into why I got into real estate myself, and been with William Wright Commercial for the past 5 years. And it's been an amazing journey.
And I will say, when Rod first applied, we had to dive deep into the application there, not knowing if Rod MacKay Sr. was planting a mole in the company.
Right.
But I can say with confidence, Mr. MacKay did not plant a mole in the company. He's been a great supporter of us and Rod the whole time. So we really appreciate it.
And so, Rod, I didn't realize you grew up in a real estate family.
Yeah, Rod. Well, it's actually, I've got the same name, Roderick MacKay. I'm actually Roderick MacKay the third. So my dad's also Roderick MacKay. He goes by Rod MacKay, and I more or less do too. So it kind of gets a little confusing sometimes. People are reaching out on his listings to me and vice versa. But I think it's probably good for business all around.
And just so everyone knows, when someone calls off his dad's listing, assuming it's him, Rod would never take that list, never take that inquiry and go sell them one of his listings, just so we know.
Well, I he's pretty generous, so I don't have to. He passes a lot of stuff my way, fortunately enough. But outside of work, I like to stay active, golfing, maybe playing softball every now and then, hiking, and then, as you mentioned, running, which isn't, I don't know if I like it that much, but it's a good challenge. And ended up doing the full marathon, the BMO Vancouver Marathon yesterday, which was my first marathon. Did it with my girlfriend, and it was actually a lot of fun.
How did you find it?
It was good. The conditions were perfect. It wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. We didn't get rained on. I actually did the half last year, and we were delayed for about an hour and a half. People thought there was a suspicious package on the race course, so that was kind of my first experience into the marathon world. So that was pretty annoying. But this year, everything smooth sailing. Ended up under 4 hours, which was my goal. So
wow.
Finished really strong. My last split was my fastest by far. So I was pretty much sprinting, and I had a really good cheering crowd. My girlfriend Carol's dad is in from Toronto. and he's done a number of marathons. And then my parents and my aunt kind of drove around and cheered us along the way, as well as aunt, uncle, and cousins. So yeah, we had lots of support along the way. And then there was the expo on Saturday where you kind of pick up your race bib and everything. And I was in line, kind of where you take your picture, kind of with your bib. Everybody lines up to get it taken, and there was this gentleman behind me in line, and his young kids didn't seem too keen on him waiting in line to take a photo. And they're asking him, "Why do you take a photo?" And he said, "Well, it's for the memories." And so I said to him, "Do you want to go in front of us? Yeah, it sounds like you need to get out here." He's like, "Oh, that would be great." And then he goes, "Are you Rod MacKay?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Jonathan Ma." I was like, "Oh, no way." So we've actually talked over the phone, and he's an avid listener of the podcast and actually a client of William Wright's. But yeah, he recognized the voice, and then yeah, so good to see a listener of the podcast and the client. Shout out to Jonathan Ma.
Yeah, shout out to John Ma, friend of both shows.
Yes.
Yeah, I know he ran the marathon as well. He was under 4 hours as well. So it's a small world.
That's right.
So Rod, one reason why we wanted to have you on again today is we had you on earlier in the year. We sort of pick our top 5 markets every year, and you're gracious enough to spend your time and kind of outline that. We're sitting here, what are we, first week of May?
May 8th.
Almost May 8th, almost getting to the middle of May here now, approaching that halfway point soon. We wanted to check in with you and sort of say, how has the commercial real estate market been so far this year? Winners and losers. And also, where do you think the real estate market's going for the latter half of this year and into 2024? So we thought we'd give you as much runway as you need to kind of break that down. So maybe let's talk about what are the high points. Now, we're not talking about interest rates. What are the high points so far? Maybe the first half of this year in commercial real estate that may have caught some people off guard.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I don't know how you can't talk about interest rates. I mean, I think that's kind of the number one thing that's been on everyone's mind. And obviously, kind of as we finished up 2022, on the investment side of things, we did see a lot of slowing in activity due to the high interest rates, and people were just kind of waiting and seeing. Now that we fast forward to today and we've seen the Bank of Canada rate hold, I think that's generated a lot of optimism in the market. And we kind of expected that if that did happen, there would be a lot of optimism. Now we're finally seeing it. As I mentioned to you guys before this call, I just sitting outside of a retail unit that I had listed for sale. Still have listed for sale, but it's under contract. I think we got it under contract in the first 2 weeks with multiple offers. I think over 15%. We're under contract over 15% above the assessed value. So that's a retail unit here in Vancouver. So I think we're seeing a lot more optimism sort of in the beginning of 2023. From what I saw was, we were busy, but, working with clients, there was a lot of education and kind of figuring out what their goals and plans were. But people certainly weren't pulling the trigger the way that they were when interest rates were next to nothing. Now that we've seen the rate hold, people they can at least kind of see that for the foreseeable future where things are going to be. And we're seeing activity pick up quite a bit, even just in the last month or so.
So maybe stepping back on the residential side, what we've seen this year is demand come back into the market, but inventory remain at kind of historic lows. What does inventory look like in, I guess, Vancouver and more generally across the commercial landscape?
Yeah, definitely. So we can kind of, talk about it broadly, and we can also just jump into each asset class as well. So broadly, I mean, inventory seems quite low, especially if you look at land, where we've seen a dramatic drop in volume and sales just because of it's challenging for developers to get the lending with the rates where they are. As far as various asset classes where we are for inventory, if you look at the industrial asset class, which we talk about a lot, how strong it's been performing, and it's continued to do so. It's probably taken a bit of a step back from where it was, just based on activity slowing across the marketplace. But it's still very strong. Inventory's low. With the interest rates being higher, you're seeing a lot of businesses, switch to leasing, and where they might have been buyers before. Still seeing lease rates, in the industrial asset class creep up, and the vacancy rates are very low. If you look at office in Vancouver, I think we're hovering just below 10% for vacancy rate. It seems pretty high because I think we were sub 3 prior to COVID, but it's actually, from what I'm reading, it's still the lowest in North America. So, even though 10% seems quite high, it's not all that bad relative to the rest of the country and also our neighbors down south. And a lot of obviously COVID and the way that the workplace is changing had a big impact on the office market here in Vancouver. But as I mentioned, prior to COVID, we were sub 3% vacancy rate, which meant that developers were very bullish and there was a massive amount of inventory being built. And we're kind of at the end of that supply cycle where most of it's being built and it's just taking a little bit longer for it to get absorbed. But that's, we were in a market where it was extremely tight. And obviously with COVID, that's changed things a bit.
We haven't really seen office lease rates come off terribly much because that's the natural thing. People think, oh, vacancy's up, cheap deals. We haven't really seen the numbers come off too much, but the incentives put forward by landlords have increased. So they're kind of holding out to get their numbers, but they're having to offer more to get those numbers, whether it be free rent or fixturing or TI to get them in. And it'll be interesting to see how things shake out because Rod did mention there that we're kind of coming to the end of a construction supply cycle now where there's a lot of inventory that's sort of coming available that's been under construction and will continue to come available over the next 12 months. Once that gets absorbed, the vacancy rate should start to come back down, which keeping in mind, a balanced market would be considered probably 7 or 8%. So we're just over a balanced market and we were in a very unhealthy market for tenants. Great market for landlords. They could throw a number up and people would pay it. Very unhealthy for tenants, both on renewals and also trying to get into the office market. So I think you flush out the next 12 to 24 months, we'll look back on this and things will be right back into a much tighter office market as we get a lot of new tenants that will change space. Inventory will get absorbed and pricing will most likely hold itself, I would think. But the incentives are definitely have to be up.
Yeah, the incentives are very high up. And I've heard some crazy numbers that I was actually about to cite, but then I realized that I've got some listings where, I probably shouldn't talk about how high the incentives are because I got to take care of my landlords as well. But definitely a lot of inducements being offered, and especially for shell space. Since there is so much inventory on the market, if you're, let's say, a law office and you want a new office, chances are there's product out there that you could just move in turnkey that's fully built out with the exact amount of offices you need, a kitchenette, all that. So the shell space where you're gonna have to do full build out, go through the permits, it could be 6 months to a year down the road till you move in. And that's where you really need to offer these inducements in order to get these tenants taking up that shell space.
Okay. So we've talked about, industrial, as I understand, which was kind of the darling for the last couple of years, is kind of come off those highs, which, nothing lasts forever. That was such a crazy market. Office, we've seen the vacancy rate creep up. It sounds like land, like bare land for development is also slower, as I understand, Rod, because the numbers just don't pencil.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess retail. Did you cover retail?
We haven't gotten into retail. So retail's actually made a huge comeback in 2022. It's actually looking quite strong. I mean, I think coming out of COVID, everyone just kind of wondered what was going to happen to retail. We saw a big shift towards industrial warehousing with the e-commerce boom and less people going to stores. Obviously, as COVID was going on, a lot of people would rather do their shopping online. And so the thought, some people were worried that people weren't going to go into stores anymore. But, that doesn't seem to be true. There's pretty low vacancy rates, especially for good product. They seem to be absorbing quite well, even if you just kind of see the signs up and then seems like retailers are taking them over and opening up pretty quickly. But yeah, I'd say retail is a bit of a surprising one that's looking stronger than expected. But Cory, maybe I'll let you touch on that one a little bit too. I know you're an avid retail investor yourself.
Well, I think when you look at the retail market too, obviously it goes through highs and lows. And this is one thing I think everyone has to remember right now. So when people are selling land, in most cases, the highest price to fetch for land is usually from sort of like a strata condo development market is where you're seeing the biggest numbers. Now, in some of those similar zonings is components where you could put offices or mixed use buildings. And the problem is a lot of times numbers don't pencil for that. So I think when we fast forward 5 or 6 years down the road and you have record-setting immigration numbers coming in year over year over year, most of the land that's out there is eventually going to have to get turned into rental product or to strata condo product to try to just slowly maintain pace with what we're already falling behind with year over year over year. As that happens, a lot of new OCPs will get developed, and a lot of areas that develop from OCPs are like older industrial areas where you might have a 20 or 30,000 square foot yard, maybe a 3,000 square foot building, a whole bunch of trucks parked, employs 3 people. You can pop up 300 homes on that nowadays. So I think as you go forward, every asset class, whether it be office in Vancouver, which I think is challenged just based on the boundaries and everything, all the challenges we have there, whether it be industrial product, or even if you look at the retail market standpoint, some of the secondary and tertiary markets, is you're going to have the land's going to get absorbed for the best, highest use, which in most cases is going to be residential development in some form. No one's buying land downtown Nanaimo like, hey, let's go put up an office tower. Like those conversations aren't happening. But what is happening is when people are buying land to build homes in downtown Nanaimo, more people are showing up. Well, the more people that show up, people have to work somewhere. So now, again, if you have 6 office buildings in downtown Nanaimo as an example, and you fast forward 10 years and you add another 20,000 people to Nanaimo, which is adding 20% to their population, 2.5% growth over 10 years. Well, guess how many office towers you have downtown Nanaimo still? 6, right? So no one's like, hey, let's go buy land and build office towers. Same thing's happening in downtown Vancouver, right? Like after a lot of these office buildings are all getting built, there's not really a whole lot of land left that you can really build any more office buildings. Yet more and more people are going to come to the greater Vancouver area, going to work in downtown. Naturally, that vacancy rate will slowly start to peter off because you don't have any more land to build. And same with industrial land in a lot of these areas. If some of these industrial lands turn into OCPs, or OCPs get turned out.
Official community plans for
official community plans. And then people start developing that. And guess what? People still need industrial space, but now there's less industrial space to pick from.
Right.
So naturally, the vacancy rate is going to go down. Prices will go up. And that's almost repetitive in almost every major BC market, whether it be Victoria, Nanaimo, Kamloops, or Kelowna, or Greater Vancouver, or the Fraser Valley. All 6 of those markets are landlocked in some capacity.
One thing that strikes me, and I don't know if we've ever talked about it as explicitly, it seems like a fairly obvious point, but I don't think we've ever talked about the housing crisis creep into the commercial landscape and how there's that direct correlation right across the province.
It has major effect, right? Because if you look at something like Victoria, and again, I'm going to botch these numbers, so like these are completely inaccurate, but I think I read a report last year, they were like 70,000 homes behind pace, and every year that number was growing at an average of almost 9%. So if they delivered 70,000 homes this year, which is physically impossible, they would then be 9% behind what the next year's forecast is. And of the 70,000 homes, they're probably delivering maybe 1,000 homes is my guess. I don't know. I'm completely guessing at this point, but say 5,000 homes.
Yeah.
Right? You're still 65,000 behind last year's pace plus 9% that's compounding on itself. And when you look at that, all the land that's going to come available, the city's going to say, okay, well, how can we take that old industrial area, say like a Harris Green district, which you had old industrial and car lots and all that stuff, and how can we put like 5,000 homes? And these are the areas that are going away. Well, guess what? The Mazda dealership's got to go somewhere. All these industrial places got to go somewhere, but now you have less land to play with. And that will sort of repeat itself over and over and over again. And here's the biggest wow factor. It's an island, right? There's no more land, right? So you're going to get to the point where it's all going to eventually turn into housing or try to turn into housing at some point, and all these commercial places are going to have to go somewhere. And they're going to have to eventually find a new home, but there'll be less land to pick from. So naturally, you're going to watch vacancy rates fall, prices go up with it. You just got to be strategic in what you're buying and when you're buying it. Like, you buy today in a bad area and crossing your fingers, it's going to be really good in 20 years. That's a pretty good bet. It probably will be really good in 20 years, but you have to make it to 20 years.
You got to carry it for the first 10.
So there's so many things like there in all these markets that you're going to have fluctuations in asset classes. You're going to have fluctuations in vacancy in asset classes and prices in asset classes. But the problem is there's not really enough land to kind of properly service the demand and needs over the next 20 to 40 years, both on the commercial side and the housing side. And the housing side is going to take precedence because that's where people have to live.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty good segue, I guess, into the next asset class. We've talked about office, industrial, and retail. Let's hop into multifamily where people live. It's it seems to be a really, really steady investment. People seek it out just because people need a roof over their heads. Vacancy rates are extremely low across pretty much all of the markets that we work in. I touched on the fact that, to purchase land, it's very challenging bringing sellers' expectations to where the buyers can afford it when they're looking to develop a site. I know we were looking at a couple sites in Coquitlam, and it was actually older multifamily building. We were looking to assemble with a few other single-family residential lots adjacent to it. And the numbers worked out okay for the single-family residential, but on a price per buildable square foot, the numbers came in below assessed value for the multifamily property. And it was actually a real estate investment trust that owned this building. And, they're just not going to look at offers below assessed value. Whether or not the assessed value has that much impact on what a commercial building's worth, there's a bit of correlation. The problem is inventory is very low, vacancies are very low, and we're not seeing enough product coming to market. As a result of that, though, the multifamily rents are just shooting up. I mean, it's I've seen a bunch of different reports. You guys might have better numbers, but I anywhere between sort of 20 to 30% increase, I think, even in Vancouver over the past year. And I've seen a lot of anecdotal evidence of that just from talking to people, just that have moved or are in the rental market where they, moved in a year ago and where it's at today. It's been skyrocketing. The problem is we're not incentivizing the developers enough, on a municipal, provincial, and probably federal level to build, especially in the markets when, you're sitting on, if you're buying a few single family lots and you're holding the land for a couple of years and it's not really producing any income. Meanwhile, you're getting hammered by the interest rates and then all the fees that you have to pay to the municipalities. It's hard to make it make sense right now. So with less and less inventory coming to the market, this multifamily asset class is seen as extremely secure to investors. And it's the asset class where, with office, retail, and industrial, you can get the owner occupiers. With multifamily, you're really just getting investors, people that are looking to get a return on their dollar. And essentially, the cap rates that they're getting for multifamily are typically lower than any other asset class, just because it's seen as so stable. And from what I see, it's the investors from the multifamily asset class usually have more of a long-term vision mindset than maybe some of the others.
Well, I've got the solution to the rental problem.
Oh, I'm glad I showed up.
Let's hear it.
Well, this is going to be a whole other podcast, but I'll tell you how you solve the rental problem. You take away rental restrictions. And if you do that right now, no renter wants to hear that. And I'm not saying that kind of like in a derogatory way towards renters. But what's going to happen is you're going to then take those restrictions away. And now more and more developers and REITs and all of that stuff will look into that asset class to create housing. Seattle's a great example, right? Housing is plentiful now in Seattle because there's no rental restrictions. The problem with that is you're going to create 3, 4, or 5 years of havoc for renters because landlords will just be like, well, I don't know. How about you pay $5,000?
Right.
And it's going to create a challenge for renters. And that cycle to get the new inventory to market, to actually start to increase inventory and lower the rental rates, is going to be outside of that 4-year political cycle. So no politician's going to get in and say, hey, rental restrictions are gone. That person will not survive the next election because the rates are going to go up so much. It takes time to get that supply. How you backstop that is you create incentive programs from the government, federal, and provincial level that's going to put enough money or breaks into that thing to kind of offset that for developers to start getting that supply to the marketplace. Fast forward 10 years, now you've increased supply and you're probably still falling behind population growth, but you've increased supply enough that maybe you then can consider removing those rental restrictions. So you almost got to pick your poison. Either I'm going to remove rental restrictions and get my butt kicked out of politics after because the rent rates are going to go up. But fast forward 10 years, will be much more supply and you actually start to hopefully see numbers come off. Or I go into the coffers and I take money out and I incentivize developers so much they can't say no to get supply to the market that we can then do that. Because it's a supply and demand game and always will be. And when you look at record-setting immigration rates or immigration numbers coming into the province where a lot of those people are going to stay in the greater Vancouver area or the lower mainland, that's your problem. And you can't blame people for wanting to live in Vancouver. Like with all due respect, if you go to your hometown, Winnipeg, right? Nothing wrong with Winnipeg. But if you go to Winnipeg or you come back to Vancouver, you're like, well, I'm glad I'm home in Vancouver. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, right? And during COVID, you had to get locked down. Is there a better place in the world to get locked down than BC? Oh, great. I'm locked down in BC. Great. I'll go to Tofino for the weekend. I'll go to Victoria. I'll go skiing at Whistler. I'll drive to Kelowna, have some wine. Could you get locked down in a better province? Right? So you can't blame people for wanting to come here. Right? So, this is a whole other podcast and it's obviously not these things won't happen probably for the foreseeable future, but that's how you start to solve this stuff. That coupled with, to Rod's comment, holding land for so long is one of the hardest parts of being a developer. You got to expedite that. So create a program where potentially you've got, hey, strata condo development program A, commercial development program B, and rental product program C. And program C is just going to be the fastest one to get through to help minimize some of those costs to get more product to the market. Because the reality is, if you go back to a young family and say, I'm going to give you $1 million, where do you want to live? In 1995, they would be on the Street of Dreams in Westwood Plateau. You give them $1 million now, they're like, man, I really hope I can get a townhouse in Abbotsford. And they're not buying into this market because they necessarily want to. They're buying in because that's what they can afford. And the progression is going to be, you leave mom and dad's house, you probably rent, and then you rent again, and then you rent again maybe, and then you buy a condo, and then you buy a 2-bedroom condo, then you buy a townhouse, and you're 40, you get a house. Like that's going to probably be the natural progression for a lot of people, just with how unaffordable the reality is. So instead of sitting here and blinding ourselves, like how can we fix affordability? Let's not worry about affordability. Let's get product to the market so people can live in houses and not have to pay $3,000 for a condo rental. So that way they can save money to be able to afford a house at some point. Whole different podcast.
You heard it here first. Premier Cory Wright.
Well, that's the challenge though, is, it's not a very popular campaign to run telling, all the renters that we're going to raise rents to unlimited levels and landlords have full control. But, if you actually look at the bigger picture, that can be actually what helps solve the problem.
Yeah.
But, you have to do some digging to actually figure that out. And then in the short term, does it help people? Maybe not. So it's a challenging one. I think, if there was a super easy fix that would happen right away, maybe it would have been done. But like I said, not a super attractive campaign policy.
Well, the other challenge you have coming out of COVID, or coming out of like the COVID era with all the inflation on the landlord side of things, you've got, because you're collecting gross rents on the commercial side, you've got increasing property taxes. Municipalities' budgets are going up. That's a property tax increase, right? You got garbage, water, recycling. All of these costs are going up and up and up and up, where landlords are eventually going to get to the point where like, okay, my rent's going to go up on average, let's say 4.5%, 2% on the ones that stay, 8% on the ones that leave. But my costs are going to go up 8 to 12%, and I'm getting hammered on the interest rate side. Oh yeah, and my roof just went. So that's another $400,000 I got to invest that I can't recapture that cost in the immediate future. Why do I want to invest in this asset class? And that's going to be challenges. There's no right or wrong answer because there's a good debate on both sides. But the only answer is you got to get supply to market, and you got to incentivize developers to do it because they're paying too much for land. Because the guy that sells the land says, I don't care what you put on this land. You can put a tent for all I care. You're going to pay the highest and best price for the land, which unfortunately computes to usually condo development, not rental product.
Right.
So we've talked about pretty much all the asset classes. We've gone over office, retail, industrial, multifamily, and we touched on land a bit. Maybe if we talk a little bit more broadly about where the market's been and where we see it going, I think a big challenge sort of on the brokerage side of things that we were seeing before was, sellers' expectations were extremely high. Anytime you have interest rates drop as low as they do, you're going to see the pricing come up quite a bit. So if you see your neighbor sell at, let's say, $2 million, when it was assessed at $1 million, now the market's come off and people are offering you $1.4 million. Well, you're saying, no, it's worth $2 million. My neighbor sold for that 8 months ago. The problem is that we're in a different market, and the amount of people that can afford that $2 million for the same product versus the $1.4 million has decreased fairly substantially. Now, that was sort of end of 2022, beginning of this year. As we and this time of year too, as we come into spring, it always seems to pick up, sort of, except for March of 2020, things weren't picking up, but things tend to pick up in the springtime anyway. And as we see interest rates hold and more certainty in the future, buyers are coming back to the market. Having said that, I think that sellers are going to have to get a little bit more realistic, and pricing's probably overall might come off a little bit because we certainly hit a peak back in 2021, and I think from there pricing's overall probably has to come a bit down. But that's a pretty big blanket statement, and
Fantastic. So, Rod, what is the most surprising asset class? Retail, the sure thing, multifamily. What's the best buy in your mind right now for somebody looking to get into the market? Yeah,
if it depends on your goals, really, right? Because you could, if if you're looking for something with maybe a little bit more short-term uptick, sort of 5-10 years, get your money out, double it kind of thing, you're probably still looking into these secondary and tertiary markets. And I know Cory's kind of hammered this home quite a bit. But, if you want something very stable, something stable with low vacancy rates, you may have already seen that uptick, but it's a really good long-term investment. You're not going to have to worry about a lot of vacancies with tenants turning over. Maybe you stay in more of the primary markets, like a Vancouver. It's hard to say exactly what to buy, but I think industrial strata is a great buy. Now, the price per square foot is fairly high due to the owner-occupier market, so it makes it a little bit harder to service the debt. But you can find a tenant right away, and it's not like the office market where you're having to put in major inducements in terms of free rent, tenant improvement allowances. You can essentially sign the lease, give them the keys, and they start paying you rent. So that's a very carefree, hands-off investment is industrial strata.
Class B industrial strata. There's
Class
your
B.
answer.
Yeah.
Class B. Rod, before we let you go, we have our 6-pack of lighthearted questions here. And because you've been on the show so much, we've had to kind of change it up and throw the odd wrinkle question in there. Do you have a few more seconds for us?
I sure do.
The 6-pack is powered by our great friends over at Red Point Law.
Oh, the guys at Red Point Law are fantastic, Cory.
For all your legal needs when it comes to commercial real estate, visit them at redpointlaw.ca. All right, Rod, first question up. Favorite restaurant or bar 2023 edition? Maybe you tried somewhere new this year. You want to make a recommendation?
This isn't somewhere new, but it just kind of popped into my mind as you said it. And as the weather is starting to get nicer, I think I'd like to have some mussels out on the patio at Cardero's.
Oh, so when you say mussels, you mean like Matt showing up in a tank top, or do you mean like mussels, like the seafood mussels?
Yeah. If he could serve it, that would work too.
I just got a visual of myself doing that. And that grossed me out.
Topless, wearing an apron, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's vision A, or vision B is me looking like a pear with no shirt on a Peloton.
All right, let's move on quickly. Book recommendation.
This one right now, actually, it's another podcast I listen to. I think it's called The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. And he just interviews a lot of sort of top performing people in their various industries and sort of talks about how they got there and what works for them. And so he's come out with a book called The Greatness Mindset. Just sort of getting into it, probably, I don't know, close to 100 pages in, but some really good lessons to be learned there. So The Greatness Mindset by Lewis Howes would recommend.
All right, Rod.
Fantastic.
Post-COVID office wear, suit and tie or dress shirt and a sweater?
I gotta say, I'm going with dress shirt and a sweater. I think there's definitely a time and place for the suit, but I think we've seen a lot of we've seen attire change sort of post COVID a bit. You still definitely want to dress smart, but I think a lot of people do appreciate not the suit and tie every day, but there is still a time and a place.
You know what is interesting? There was just an article, I think it came out yesterday in the New York Times about Ken Sim and whether the Chinese government influenced the election, and kind of a ridiculous article. But one thing they said about Ken Sim, and then they had kind of a photo spread of him throughout this article, was the first time he ran as a suit and tie, used to be an investment banker, yada, yada, yada. Now he's all Lululemon all the time. And every photo was hoodies, nice hoodies, running shoes. I think Ken is the guy to watch in terms of
fashion.
In terms of fashion. I don't think I would have ever said that, but
fashion forward in Vancouver. Well, it's funny. I was sitting at my desk today before I came up here, and Rod, as he mentioned, he had to go go for a showing today. He walks by my office, and I thought he was going to his yacht. He had this nice white and blue sweater on. He's got the brown shoes. Like the guy was going right for the boat.
Man,
that is the dress code now in 2023.
Well, we capitalized on the Bay Day sale. Highly recommend that. I'm a spokesperson for them. I'll get a bit of a kickback for this. So the Hudson North is their new brand, and Bay Day sales. You can't go wrong there.
And Rod, just for the listeners, like how much do you get off on a Bay Day sale?
So it was 50% off plus an additional 50% off.
So it's free.
It was
50%
free. I couldn't afford not to. I think I had $100 in Bay points, and I got $600 worth of clothing.
Well, I'll tell you this. Not only are we solving the rental crisis today, I'm going to solve the Hudson Bay's financial problem really quickly here.
Yeah.
If I'm giving 50% off a sweater from it's $100 and now it's $50, and then you come to the tell me another 50% off, that's $0. So not only did we solve the rent, we just solved Hudson's Bay's financial crisis.
The other thing, not to go too hard on the Hudson's Bay, but I've never been, I feel like I've said this on the show, I've never went to a store before where you find something you like, you look at the price and you go, all right, I'll pay that. And you walk up and they go, 60% off. You're like, why? You don't advertise that, but it's like you're doing this backwards.
I'll tell you right now. This is again here. We're solving it. We're just fixing the world here today. The Gap. Okay, remember when you go to the Gap and they have the sweater for like $68, and then you go on sale and it's like $5.
Yeah,
they train customers that it's not worth $68. So you would just simply wait for all the clothes to go on sale,
right?
And you'd buy it for $5, right? They're training you that their quality of craftsmanship of a sweater is not worth full price.
Well,
so you just wait for the sales.
Corey is being modest. I know he shops on a bit of a higher level. He's hasn't been to the Bay in the last decade. He's more of a Harry Rosen guy. But he his saying is, I think he'll come home with expensive shoes and this and that, and his wife's probably going, "You've got 100 pair of shoes. What do you need those for?" And I think he says something along the lines of, "It's not about what you spend. It's about what you save."
Exactly. That's what I say all the time. It's not how much it costs, how much do you save. But I will say, just to defend myself, I also buy my stuff from Harry Rosen at 50% off. They've also trained me not to wait to buy stuff on sale, not to pay full price. So we're just solving the Canadian economics.
Yeah, there you go.
Economy.
All right, Rod. Who is going to win the Stanley Cup? This is
we're mixing it up.
Yeah,
today.
This is one I've never seen before.
Oh man, I don't know. Florida's out of control here. They beat Boston. They're up 3-0 on the Leafs. I think it's hard to bet against them. They got so much momentum. I didn't really pay too much attention during the regular season, but I always love watching playoff hockey, and they're I don't know, they got so much momentum going right now. It would be pretty interesting to see Florida win. Probably not the biggest hockey market, but I think taking down the Bruins after a record-setting season would be pretty cool. And I think also a lot of those guys are Canadian hockey players.
Well, yeah,
so it'd be nice
and not
to
but an indictment to against the current Winnipeg Jets squad. Paul Maurice, the coach that threw up his hands and left Winnipeg in disgust last year, is now the head coach of the team that is probably going to walk their way through the Stanley Cup.
Now, it was his disgust. Like, was he done? Was it like weather-wise? Because to go from Winnipeg and fall, it was up in Florida almost seems rigged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a Jets fan, and it's tough to say, but man, there's something wrong in that dressing room.
Well, hey, you know what? You're doing something right because we haven't gone to the playoffs over here, so we're behind there. Maybe we'll get Connor Bedard today. We'll see. All right, Rod. Next question up here. What's a TV show you're currently binge watching?
What am I watching right now? It wasn't much because I was in bed so early with all this marathon training and whatnot. So we'd usually just throw on The Office. Office is our default show. I don't know. Everyone I feel like has a default show where they don't know what they want to watch. They throw on something. We just throw on The Office. It's pretty light and easy stuff.
Did you see that social media post where the character Dwight, I think that's the character's name.
Oh,
there's a guy on a plane, and I guess he's got a mask on, so you can't. He's got a mask and like a hat on, so you can't really see it's the Dwight guy. And there's this guy,
the actor.
The actor, and this guy, he kind of takes his camera and he kind of pans over to the guy next to him, and the guy's like thoroughly, intensely watching The Office on the plane.
Yeah,
and he doesn't realize he's sitting right next to Dwight.
Oh.
Yeah, that's Rainn Wilson, who also, I think he was a recent guest on the Lewis Howes podcast that I mentioned.
Oh my God!
Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, The Office. We can make a show to that.
Future client William Wright in front of the show.
Yeah, we'll make a show to that. The Office.
All right, Rod. Last question for you, and we'll let you get back to that inspection. Favorite band, 2023 edition.
Favorite band, 2023 edition. I don't even know if I can answer this.
I'll help you. Rod likes Nickelback.
Nickelback. No, I will say, we talk about this a lot, and actually, Cory had his 40th birthday party a while back, and we all kind of dressed up in, either jean jackets and jeans or leather jackets, that kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. With Nickelback, I know a lot of I think a lot of people say they don't like Nickelback just to say they don't like it. Have you listened to like the top like 10 greatest hits? Those songs are bangers. You play it when the sun's shining. You're going on a road trip. Tell me you're not having a good time. I think the majority of people that say they hate Nickelback actually love Nickelback secretly. They're closeted Nickelback fans, and that's all I'll say.
Well, here's the one thing I'll direct everyone who wants to say that the Nickelback's not very popular. Go into Ticketmaster right now and try to find a ticket for the Vancouver show. Tell you right now, you can't because it's
there.
Sold
you go.
Out.
There you go.
Sold out. Now, Chad Kroger might have bought all the tickets. We don't know, but as of right now, you can't find a ticket.
Yeah, I think you're getting a lot of. You're probably getting quite a bit of suburban commuting to that concert. Would be my guess. But,
hey, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't matter if they come from Chilliwack, Kelowna, or Vancouver. They're all paying the same ticket price to put their butt in the seat there.
Yeah. So is that what I get for being on the show today? I get a ticket to the Nickelback show? Or?
No, we're going to give you a Nickelback T-shirt that you can wear around the office.
T-shirt. Excellent.
Well, Rod, how can people find out more about what you're doing at William Wright Commercial in Vancouver?
Yeah, I always enjoy a phone call. If someone wants to chat, emails are a little bit less personal. It's always nice to start chatting with the person, getting to know them a bit. So call me on my cell, 604-763-5510. Yeah, you can take a look at our listings at williamwright.ca. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, and good luck with that, with getting subjects off that property on Hastings.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, looks like they're all done. They left here now, so I'm keeping an eye on the door. But yeah, thanks a lot for having me on again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Rod. Take care, and we'll see you back at the office.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye-bye. There you have it, folks. Our interview with Rod MacKay from our William Wright Vancouver office. Great insight again. Like he's
one of the best.
One of the best. And you were saying before, one of the highest rated podcasts we've had from a listenership on the download and stream side of it has been Rod's top 5 episode he does.
Yeah, you know
year.
what? It performs both in the download space and on the website. I think more people go to the talk with Rod MacKay about the 5 best investment areas in BC than almost any other page, which is saying something because I feel like I've put blood, sweat, and tears into this for over 8 years, and you guys waltz in and steal the show.
Well, just for the listeners, just when we're talking about like top rated shows, we're talking like what 10, 20 million downloads for that episode.
Yeah,
30 million maybe.
Yeah,
population of Canada's downloaded it pretty much at this point.
Basically. What else do we have for the day? Cory, how can people find out more about what you're doing over at William Wright Commercial?
They can send me an email anytime, Cory@williamwright.ca. They can call our Vancouver office, tell us what they're looking for. We'll put you in touch with the best agent throughout the province. Best service your assets at 604-428-5255. Or they can visit our website, williamwright.ca. Sign up for the latest and greatest news.
And speaking of websites, all these episodes do live at vancouverrealestatepodcast.com. As a lot of you know, because a lot of you are heading over to Rod MacKay's page to get the down low on those 5 investment areas, but that's vancouverrealestatepodcast.com. And of course, we'll be back next week.
All right, guys, thanks for listening.
Take care.
Subscribe today.